As some people may know, and as shown in one of my recent videos, a lot of high-ranking Nazis managed to survive the Second World War. Many, however, were not so lucky, with some dying in very violent fashions. And in this video, I'm going to be covering the highest-ranking Nazi to be assassinated during the Second World War, Reinhard Heydrich. Reinhard Heydrich joined the Nazi Party long before they would gain power on the 1st of June 1931 in Hamburg. Heydrich quickly rose through the ranks upon joining the party, possibly aided by the fact that he had the ideal physical appearance in the eyes of the Nazis, being a tall man standing at 191 centimeters or 6'3", with blue eyes and blonde hair. Another factor that almost definitely aided him is his ruthless and emotionless temperament, with him even being known as the man with the iron heart by Hitler himself. Due to these factors, Heydrich was made the chief of the Reich Main Security Office in September 1939 and was promoted to acting protector of Bohemia and Moravia in modern-day Czechia 2 years later in September 1941. He was promoted in the hope that his harsh and cruel rule over Czechia would help subdue the local Czechs, where the previous lenient approach used by Konstantin von Neurath had failed. Under Heydrich's rule, the opposition to the Nazi Party in the country were terrorized and ghetto/concentration camps were set up. It is worth pointing out that there were many other horrific acts of violence carried out by Heydrich in Czechia, but they deserve to have a video all to themselves and would take too long to mention here. Unsurprisingly, this strict rule had the intended effect on the Czechs and quelled what little resistance was left. Seeing this low amount of resistance, the exiled government of Czechoslovakia felt that something needed to be done to inspire the local Czechs and Slovaks to rise up against their German overlords and show the Allies that the Czech and Slovak peoples were truly on their side. It was at this point that the plan to assassinate a high-ranking member of the Nazi Party in Czechia was proposed, with Heydrich being chosen over Karl Hermann Frank due to his status as the acting protector of Bohemia and Moravia, as well as his reputation for terrorizing local citizens. The operation was also intended to intimidate the senior Nazis and to show them that they would not be beyond the reach of the Allies and their allied resistance groups. Preparation for this critical task began very soon after Heydrich was appointed protector on the 20th of October 1941. In preparation, František Moravec, the head of the operation, personally selected 24 of the most promising personnel from among the 2,000 exiled Czechoslovak soldiers in Britain to undergo assessment and specialised training. These 24 soldiers were then sent to training centres at Arisaig in Scotland before the finest 2 soldiers would be selected to carry out the actual assassination, being Warrant Officer Joseph Gabček, a Slovak, and Staff Sergeant Karel Svoboda, a Czech. Svoboda would be left unfit for the operation, however, when he received a head injury during training, so he was subsequently replaced with fellow Czech Jan Kubis. This, understandably, caused delays in the mission, as Kubis had not completed training at this point, nor had the necessary false documents been prepared for him. Before long, though, Gabček and Kubis, alongside 7 other soldiers from Czechoslovakia's exiled army, were on their way home on board a Halifax, with the 2 assassins-to-be dropping into German-controlled Czechia east of Prague in the early hours of the 29th of December 1941. Having landed a distance from their intended location of Pilsen due to navigation issues amongst the aircrew, Gabček and Kubis made their way to Pilsen on foot to contact their allies, before moving on to Prague where the attack was planned. Once in Prague, the pair contacted several families and Czechoslovak resistance organizations who helped them during their preparations for the assassination. Upon learning of the nature of their mission, however, the resistance leaders begged the exiled Czechoslovak government to call off the attack, saying that an attempt on Heydrich's life would be useless to the war effort and would result in tremendous consequences for the Czech people. The leaders in Britain didn't listen to the resistance's counsel, however, and insisted on the attack going forward. With their orders to carry on with the attack, Gabček and Kubis began brainstorming how they would actually take out the cruel Nazi. They initially planned to kill Heydrich on a train, but after further thought realised it would be impossible. A second plan was then thought up to kill him on a forest road that led from Heydrich's home to Prague. They planned to pull a cable across the road that would stop Heydrich's car, but after waiting several hours, and with no Heydrich, Their commander, Lieutenant Adolf Opalka, came to bring them back to Prague. It was then that the third and final plan to kill Heydrich was planned out and initiated soon after. At 10:30 on the 27th of May 1942, Heydrich started his daily commute from his home to his headquarters at Prague Castle. He was driven by SS Oberscharführer Johannes Klein. Unbeknownst to the two Nazis, Gabček and Kubis were waiting alongside a tight hairpin Heydrich would need to drive through to reach his intended destination. The idea being the tight curve there would force Heydrich's car to slow down, at which point the two assassins would jump out and shoot into the car, hopefully killing Heydrich in the process. As predicted, Heydrich's car would reach the hairpin soon after the two assassins had reached their positions under the guise they were merely ordinary civilians. As the car slowed down and rounded the corner, Gabček, who had concealed his Sten submachine gun under a raincoat, dropped the raincoat, raised the gun, and at close range opened fire on Heydrich. But unfortunately for him, the gun jammed. As the car passed the stunned assassin on the road, Heydrich made the fateful error of yelling at his driver to halt as he stood up and drew his Luger pistol. With the car braking in front of him, Kubis, who had not yet been spotted by Heydrich or his driver, threw a modified anti-tank grenade concealed in a briefcase at the vehicle. He misjudged the throw, however, and instead of landing inside the car, it landed against the rear wheel, and while not killing Heydrich, it caused serious injuries to his left side, with major damage to his diaphragm, spleen, and lung, as well as causing a fractured rib. Heydrich and Klein then leapt out of the shattered Mercedes with drawn pistols. Klein ran towards Kubis, who had staggered against some railings due to being hit in the face by some shrapnel from the blast, while Heydrich pursued Gabček, who stood paralyzed holding his Sten gun. As Klein ran towards Kubis, the Czech managed to recover, jumped on his bicycle, and pedaled away. Klein, unsurprisingly, tried to shoot at him, but dazed by the blast, pressed the magazine release catch rather than the trigger, and the gun subsequently jammed. While this was happening, a staggering Heydrich came towards Gabček, who dropped his Sten and tried to reach his own bicycle, but was forced to abandon it and took cover behind a telegraph pole, firing at Heydrich with his pistol. Heydrich then returned fire and ducked behind a stalled tram. Heydrich's wounds would prove too much for the athletic man to fight through though, and soon after he doubled over and staggered to the side of the road in pain. He then collapsed against some railings, holding himself up with one hand. Gabček, seeing his chance, took the opportunity to run as Klein returned from his fruitless chase of Kubis to help the wounded Heydrich. Instead of allowing Klein to give him medical assistance, Heydrich, with his face pale and contorted in pain, pointed towards the fleeing Slovak and shouted, "Get that bastard!" Klein, following his superior's orders, gave pursuit while Heydrich stumbled along the pavement before collapsing against the bonnet of his wrecked car. Gabček fled into a butcher's shop but was refused aid by the owner, who ran out to the street and attracted Klein's attention by shouting and pointing inside his shop, as he was a Nazi sympathizer who had a brother who worked for the Gestapo. Klein, whose gun was still jammed, then ran into the shop and collided with Gabček in the doorway. In the confusion and subsequent struggle, Gabček shot the driver twice, severely wounding him in the leg. Gabček then escaped in a tram and reached a local safe house soon after, linking up with his co-conspirator Kubis, whilst not knowing if Heydrich had even been wounded in the attack. Fortunately, Heydrich had been severely wounded, as we know, and after seeming to temporarily recover, collapsed into a coma on the 3rd of June, dying the next day. Unsurprisingly, there was sadly immense reprisals against the Czech people as a result of this attack and the consequent death of such a high-ranking Nazi. It is unclear exactly how many Czechs were killed in retaliation, but it is thought the number is around 5,000, truly begging the question of if the killing of this cruel and heartless Nazi was really worth it. Well, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Once more, I'm not going to say if you enjoyed this video, given what we ended on. But if you found it interesting, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed if you'd like to see more. Also, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all so much for 500 subs and the crazy growth of my channel lately. It's truly been amazing to see, especially considering this is just something I do for fun. But with all that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, night, wherever you are, and I hope to see you, lovely people, in the next one.